We've all heard the saying time is money, but in Genshin, time is resin. What's going on, guys? Laser here. Today I have a quick video explaining resin and resin priority. This is something that came to mind when I was playing my new free-to-play account. On my main, I basically brainlessly farm artifacts every single day with no real variety in any of my resin spending. But when you're a new player, it's very important to be smart with how you use your resin, and you have a lot more options than you can think of. I'm going to explain resin and resin priority in 3 different parts. We're going to talk about what it is, what it can get you, and how you would want to use it based on your adventure rank. Okay, let's answer the $1,000,000 question. What is resin? Resin is an in-game resource that's used to claim various rewards that can be used to upgrade your account and the various characters that you have. You can see how much resin you have on the top right hand of your screen when you open the world map. You're capped at 160 resin per day, and after that you don't get any more beyond the 160 resin cap unless you start using your resin. Resin will replenish at a rate of 1 every 8 minutes, so it's very important not to have a fully capped resin. Now let's talk about the types of resin. There really is only one type of resin, original resin, and it's the item that you see on the top right hand side of your screen in the world map. You can take this resin and spend it at different ley lines and domains, or you can take this resin to a crafting bench and craft it into condensed resin. Condensed resin is a feature that's available at Reputation Level 3 in Liyue after completing the Archon quest. It's no different than original resin, it's literally the same thing, but it's a really good way to get around the resin cap if you don't have time to play for a day. It lets you convert your active resources into something that you can use at a later time, but like everything else in the game, you're also capped at how much condensed resin that you can have. You can have 5 at once. There's 2 real ways to replenish your resin. The first is fragile resin, which you can see on the screen over here. Unlike original resin, these do not replenish with time, which makes the decision of when to use them very, very important. You get these mainly through adventure rank rewards, and you can also get them from the battle pass. Those are the 2 main methods, but you can also get them for various other ways. Sometimes you get them in the mail, sometimes they come from events and other ways. If you're very early in the game, I would highly, highly, highly recommend saving these until adventure rank 45, and I'll tell you why later. The second way to replenish your resin is through transient resin, which is basically the same thing as fragile resin. They both get you 60 original resin, but to get transient resin, you have to finish the Liyue Archon quest and also do the teapot quest. Once you've done the teapot quest and you've achieved trust rank 6 in the teapot, you can buy 1 transient resin every week for 1200 coins. The thing about transient resin though is if you don't use it in 14 days, it disappears, which is in line with our recurring theme of scarcity. So what does resin get you? Simply put, resin gets you account upgrades, which come in many forms. Character ascension materials, talent books, weapon materials, and artifacts can all be invested into your character to make them stronger. The variety of options and the limited quantity of resin makes it important to be choosy with how you spend it. There's a lot of ways to think about this, but I'll suggest this simple approach. Always go for guaranteed damage increases before going for RNG based options. We'll talk more about this later, but keep this in mind. With that said, I'm going to give some general guidance on how you should be using your resin at various adventure rank levels. Depending on what you have or may not have, you may want to deviate from this path, but generally is a good way to go. At AR10 to AR16, the priority should be spending your resin on ley lines. These lands will give you Mora and adventure rank XP that you can use to level up your characters. At AR16, you unlock weapon domains. Leveling up your weapon will increase the benefit that you get from your artifacts and increase the damage that your characters do. Once your characters and weapons have leveled up to 20 or so, take a stab at fighting some of the boss monsters located in monsters in Mondstadt in Liyue. These monsters will give you character ascension materials that you can use to level up your characters past 20, and they will also give artifacts which will come in handy for your characters. Once you get to AR20, you're going to start getting access to some of the better upgrades in the game. At AR21, you get to unlock the Andreas weekly boss fight, and at AR25, you get to unlock the Storm Terror boss fight. These bosses have really good value in the early game, you get some decent artifacts, and you have a chance at pulling weapon billets that can come in handy for crafting weapons. The downside of these bosses is that you can only do them once a week, so it's not something that's really farmable, but they are extremely valuable. Regular bosses also become more important at this point because you might be capped at how far you can level up your characters and weapons by AR restrictions, but you can still build up ascension materials for later levels while getting some artifact upgrades. Continue to sprinkle in some ley lines and weapon materials here and there because this is a bit more of a chill stage in the game. An easy way to split it up would be to spend 80 resin on bosses and the other 80 resin between ley lines and weapon materials evenly. Once you get to AR27, you unlock talent domains, and that is an extremely important upgrade. At this point, you want to refocus your attention and spend your resin almost entirely on these for a few days. These are very important because they guarantee you damage increases with your talent level when you level up your talents. Once you get to AR30, you'll want to continue focusing on talent domains. This is because you have just recently unlocked talent domains at AR27. You've already had a fair bit of time to grind for boss materials, artifacts, ley lines, and weapon domains in the early game, so continue building up your talent books. After a few days of grinding for talent books, start splitting up your resin again. You can do an even split with half of your resin on talent books and the other half on whatever you're lacking at the time. If you still have weapon upgrades that you can get, go for weapon domains. If you're low on Mora, go for some ley lines. But always remember to continue doing the 2 weekly bosses. AR35 is a very important level. You unlock a new weekly boss at the Golden House, but more importantly, you finally get access to the good artifact domains. Since you are farming up your weapon materials, bosses, and talent books earlier on, you can now comfortably focus on artifacts after leveling up your characters. Noblesse Oblige, Crimson Witch, Viridescent Venerer are all major upgrades compared to the beginner artifact sets like Instructor or Exile that you've been using up until this point. The only downside with artifacts is that they are very RNG based, but at this point, getting to level 12 or level 16 artifacts on all of your main characters is a huge upgrade in and of itself, regardless of what substats you get on them. Try to focus on the good artifact sets that you can use on multiple different characters. Once I hit this level on my own account, the first artifact set I went for was the Noblesse Oblige, just because of how universal the 2-piece set effect is. It's a bit of a brainless phase when you're farming artifacts, but it really is one of the best damage upgrades you're going to get. You might notice that as you're leveling up your artifacts, you start running low on Mora, so do sprinkle in a few ley lines here and there. AR40 to AR45 is a little bit of a chill phase. If you've already maxed out your talents, weapons, and characters by this point, just continue to dump your resins on artifacts with a few more ley lines here and there. Really, the theme here is just to focus on whatever you're lacking the most. One important thing to mention is that at AR40, you get a chance at getting gold artifacts from artifact domains, which are significantly better than the purple ones. This really goes back to what I said earlier in the video though. Focus on guaranteed upgrades first. It's all RNG with the artifacts at this point, so if you still haven't maxed out your talents or can still upgrade your weapons or your characters can still be leveled up some more, go for that first. So now you've hit AR45. This is a huge phase because it's when gold artifacts become guaranteed from artifact domains. You now want to try and get all level 20 gold artifacts on your main team. If you've been smart and saved up your fragile resin, now is the best time to use them all up. Start hacking at artifact domains, and remember to condense your resin using crystal flies to save yourself time, otherwise this will take really long. This is really the point where you can start hunting for optimal artifact sets and substats, which is really heavily influenced by RNG, but the upside is that since you've saved a ton of fragile resin, you have a much better chance at landing good artifacts. Don't be discouraged if you don't get any god rolls though. It's really hard, and me personally on my AR58 account, I'm still searching for better artifacts. The domains I highly recommend here are mainly the Noblesse Oblige and the Emblem of Severed Fate because they are so universal and can be used on every single character, but also do some of the elemental domains if you're focusing heavy on one certain element. Some of the best sets in the game, or one of the best artifact domains in the game, is the Heart of Death and Blizzard Strayer, which is extremely good if you have Cryo and Hydro characters. The other domains are good, but aren't as universal or resin efficient, but Every character has their best in slot artifacts, so choose whichever ones that you need the most. And that's really it. I hope you found these tips useful. If I was to give a few additional tips beyond this, I would emphasize not building too many characters. I see this mistake way too often, where people build up a character and decide that they don't like them anymore and stop using them altogether. That's basically wasting all of the resources that you spent on their character up until that point, which you could have used on another character. The big tip I would give is to read up on your characters, read through their talent materials, see what they can do, and how they're used on different teams before investing into them. This game is very heavy on resource management, so be sure to be smart with your decisions. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again. Bye.